It's the first time I ever separate. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see yourself again? It's good? Okay. Hey, everybody. So I just want to introduce our guests. Well, everybody can introduce themselves. We have people we have Oscar, John, and Rob here from the Green Jail, the DC Green Jail for Housing. And they're going to be presenting all about, this is about housing, human rights, housing should be in DC. And then we're going to have oh, hey. Go ahead, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead. My name is Rob. I am partly in the Green New Deal for DC Coalition, partly in Metro DC Democratic Socialists of America, as well as Sunrise DC. I'll let the rest of our panel introduce themselves, but we're going to be here proposing a resolution to support a Green New Deal for social housing to support both our climate goals as well as and integrated into our goals to house everyone, including our low-income neighbors. So, Oscar, you want to?
Hello, everyone. My name is Oscar Villalobos. I'm the coalition coordinator for the Green New Deal for DC Coalition, and happy to be here.
I'm John. I organize with DSA, and excited to talk to you about our campaign and the policy.
We can get started. It's going to be weird because we don't have a projector, but we're going to make the best of it. Also, if you see me moving weird, it's because I took the COVID shot. So my arm can't move, my left arm can barely move, but all good. Happy to be here. So the agenda for tonight is going to be DC's current housing approaches to affordability, our proposal that our coalition, as well as DSA and Sunrise DC supports, and what are other examples that are already existing with this model. So let me get started with what is social housing. So social housing is publicly owned, the developer and the landlord, as well as the city-state. So it is public, but with transition to a developer, it gives tenants more of a voice. It is mixed income, meaning that units are rented at affordable rates, often at 30% of income. So tenants would never pay 30% of their income in those units. The majority of it is subsidized as well. So this brings down the affordability to the center. It can be nonprofit or limited nonprofit because the proceeds of that development or building or unit would go to either the maintenance of the current building, apartment buildings, or creation of new social housing. And there are examples of this already around the world. DC already has current attempts for affordable housing. We have the DC inclusionary zoning, which requires that most new and some renovated residential developments include some affordable homes. We have the Housing Production Trust Fund, which provides low-cost loans and grants to developers to help build and preserve affordable homes. We have the Preservation Fund, another tool that provides incentives to developers and leverage private dollars, as well as voucher programs using local dollars to help cover for the difference in rent a family can afford, as well as the public housing federal dollars operated and subsidized by DC's Housing Authority. So these are all programs that definitely are existing in DC, but a lot of them are underfunded, and a lot of it is just basically a leeway to give developers, especially private developers, to build new units but not make them affordable. Effectively, basically locking out any power that the tenant can have in organizing that building to make it more affordable. So we have a new proposal, not a new proposal, it was introduced like 2 years ago, but we believe that this is a way to dent DC's housing crisis in the long term, and I'm gonna pass it on to you, Don, to talk about the Green New Deal for social housing.
Great. Well, do you mind if I switch this? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I can use that.
Thank you. Well, I guess first of all, because we're like a really small group, and part of the reason we're doing these presentations is like we want to pass the Green New Deal for housing, but we also like this is a long-term campaign to commit the city to deeper investments in affordable housing in the city, and in that process, like want to educate the community about what we're doing, and also hear from y'all about like what kind of housing do you think would benefit the city? Why are you here today? Like, what are you interested in hearing? So with your permission, us being, not too many people, like 8 folks, like, could we go around and hear, like, I don't know, how long have you lived in the city? How do you feel about your housing in the city? If anyone is down to share. I heard some great conversations about affordable housing and what's really affordable housing over there. So yeah, we'd love to hear. It could be a co-op, but we aren't just supporting co-ops. So what's different about social housing is that it's popular in a lot of other countries, particularly in Europe and Southeast Asia, and it's like public housing, it's government owned. But in America, most of our public housing is directly and exclusively for low-income residents, which is important. Like, we do obviously want housing for low-income residents, and also has led us to this situation where, since we funded a lot of those programs, we have not significantly and adequately refunded them, so they continue to go into disrepair over time. So social housing is a way to create a public stock of housing that is multi-income. So a certain percent needs to go to low-income residents, a certain percent to middle income, and a certain percent can just be market rate, like can sell, or not sell, be rented at any rate. And in doing that, you have a little bit of surplus that can help fund the low-income part that continues to fund it, rather than needing to go to your city council or to Congress or the White House every decade. And they probably are not going to continue to pony up those funds, and we're going to have the issues like we see in Southwest or in a lot of our public housing right now, where it is deeply in disrepair, it is disconnected from the rest of the city, from transit, from communities, from jobs, from where people want to go. This is a way of trying to build that public housing and also build housing, because we know we need more housing, but also do it equitably and in a way that's long-term financially sound. So does that answer your question a little bit? A little bit. Okay, good. But co-ops are part of the model you can do, but not the only thing. Yeah.
So I'm hearing social housing. Is this all new, or is this existing spaces? So for example, around the city, there are so many new developments, so many new existing developments. So are you all supposed to take current locations to make social housing?
Totally. Yeah. I'll just go through it, but that is a great question. So it would empower an agency to do both. So it could either build new housing, a percent of which there would have to be stipulations. There are stipulations around how much of the stock of new housing it would create would go to low income versus middle income versus whatever percent renters. But it could also buy up existing buildings and retrofit it and rent in that way. So it could do both in that way. And I think that's been important for our coalition, because it helps get at, like, we do need to build some more housing for the city, but also a lot of renters in the city are in really, buildings that are suffering, and because those buildings are in disrepair, the renters are dealing with, health injustice, things like that. So our social housing program could be a way to buy up those buildings, have the city manage them, and move some of those funds from market rate housing directly into investments in that housing. So that's the hope.
Yeah, I know one of the examples that I saw was I used to live like around 14th Street Northeast and H, and there was a building that I think now is up for sale for 50 or so market rate units, but there was a building that I used to live by, which I think was right outside the AMC because it was on H Street, but it was sort of a derelict DC, a building that was used by the DC government as a sort of or was some government building that hadn't been used for a while, and this is one of the things that we could propose to basically incentivize the district to take some derelict buildings and utilize them to support any like housing that actually is affordable for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only rentals.
Only rentals. They would not be for purchase. One other thing just on that is that the city has a ton of public land, particularly WMATA, like above metros and above our metro stations, around our metro stations. A lot of parking lots around our metro stations that are currently being considered for sale to private developers from our city government actually could instead be used to be not sold, but used by our own public developer to create more affordable housing rather than just going to luxury developers who would definitely not be creating housing that would service most people. So it's also a way to like actually be able to build on the public land that we already own.
Part of the issue that has.
Yeah.
But the home ownership is permanent.
Honestly, no, not really. This does not get at home ownership, I would say. And I hear you. I think home ownership is
Could you
a
repeat
big
the
part.
question for the interpreter? We can't hear the questions.
Yeah, do you mind if I repeat it?
Thank you.
Yeah. The question is, does this bill have to do with home ownership at all? And I was responding that it actually doesn't so much. It mostly provides rentals. I do think home ownership is really important, and I think there, like for instance, like DC's first-time home buyer program, which almost lost, I think, did lose all its funding this year and had to be replenished. That there are other attempts in the city that I think we should continue to fund, but this does not get as much as that. So, but it is a really good point. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just go through some parts of the bill that might be helpful to understand like how the housing would work. So one, the bill itself would be, or the buildings themselves would be managed by a new department, a Department of Social Housing that the city would manage. It would be led by a combination of appointments from the mayor's office, as well as from tenant leaders and environmental justice leaders in the city. And the stock of housing itself would need to be about 30% of it would need to go towards the lowest income families. So the rent for those buildings would need to be 0 to 30% of the area's median income. So now that's a lot of numbers. So it's like, you think of the area's median income as, I actually don't know what it is. Do you know?
I believe it's 30K.
Right.
Yeah,
30K.
the lowest.
So
a year.
people would need to be paying
Yeah.
30% of what they make in that bracket, and 30% of buildings would be targeted at that lowest income bracket. Another 30% would be targeted at like middle income homes, so people making 30 to 80% of the area's median income. And then the last 40% would be market rate, so it could be rented at any rate possible, and that helps fund the more heavily subsidized buildings. So it's a combination of income levels, essentially. I think it's 30K per household.
30, lowest 30.
Yeah, per year. Yep.
Buildings are set up currently, they don't have structure in place.
Yeah,
All right, so what's the difference in what's in place?
it was there. Yeah. You want to take this?
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the current affordability levels are not as low as they should be, because even, I mean, what's affordable? I think that's the question. If someone is paying, I don't know, $2,000 for one bedroom, I don't think that's affordable. So it really depends on number one, the type of unit, But number two, what does definition of affordable mean for the current buildings themselves? Even studios now are like, you could considerably think, oh, that's cheap for a studio, but still that's expensive. But for a studio, with this proposal specifically, calls it has to be 30% for people making $30,000 a year. It also emphasizes family units. That's another thing that has been missing of the proposal, that it incentivizes to build units for families. So kids, people have to play, families can have a place to stay in the city. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I think like your question also is like the current solutions that DC has, like, are they not already doing this? So we have like our inclusionary zoning program, which right now it mandates that new developers hit, I think about 30% of their builds are for the lowest income bracket, this exact same bracket that we're talking about. But what ends up happening is it's not technically mandatory. So developers can bargain essentially with the city to lower their, basically every single time developers go like, wait, we started this building, but we're not going to finish it. It's too expensive suddenly. Like, we're not going to finish it unless you lower the threshold for the low income buildings, the apartments that we're supposed to be providing. Then they lower it a little bit more, and it always ends up coming under what was initially planned. And the other thing is that the inclusionary zoning only mandates that those developers who are renting maintain those rents, those low income rents, for like around 10 to 20 years. So it's a short-term solution, but long-term, it will eventually expire and make it so that those families likely will be priced out because the rent will start increasing exponentially. I think some of the other programs we have, the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is a rotating fund that like taxes developers to then help incentivize low-income buildings. Like, it has done a really great job at building more middle-class oriented buildings in our city. But every single year when they come out with their report, the group of people who make 0 to 30% of the area's median income, the one that this is specifically targeting, every single year they're like, we have basically created no housing for that sector of renters. So I think a lot of our solutions are doing something to create low-income housing or middle-income housing in the city, but it are generally failing to address like the needs of low-income residents in particular, and the people, you know, like retail workers, service workers, teachers, a lot of folks in our medical system that really power the city. Yeah. Let me think if there's anything else I missed. We just went. Oh, I think one other important thing for the bill is that, so while it's managed by a social housing department that the city runs, at each building would have a tenant council, which is elected by tenants in the building, who, one thing that's been really important for the housing rights movement in the city is like tenants want some level of control and like agency within the buildings that they run. While tenants wouldn't have like every decision in the building, they would get a say in like what contractors the building is able to work with or not. So like a consistent issue in public housing right now is that there are contractors who just like don't do the cleanup that they say they will, or don't mow the lawn, or don't like fix the sewage issues when they say they will. So the tenant boards would be able to say like, we don't want to work with these contractors. We need developers, or the public developer, the social housing department, you need to find a new contractor, which is some level of power that I think is important for tenants to, and also helps like get us away from some of the conditions that we're seeing in some of the other low-income buildings right now. And I think the last thing on the buildings that wanted to bring up is sustainability. So there's been a lot in the city to move buildings off of fossil fuels, which is our major contributor to climate change. We were talking earlier about solar panels. Buildings are DC's biggest contributor to climate change. And if we do build new buildings built through the social housing department would need to use heat pumps and be retrofitted so that they don't have a gas hookup. Essentially, they can't use natural gas. And existing buildings that the social housing department takes over would need to have some plan to eventually be retrofitted to be off of fossil fuels completely. So it's one way of getting some chunk of our biggest contribution to, you know, environmental catastrophe off of the thing that's causing that. Yeah. Do you want to talk about something?
Okay, question. So when you, one thing that I'm just hearing is when, so it's this project being tenant run, and
Mhm.
dealing with contracts, any training factor in there so that tenants can actually become plumbers, electricians, so they can almost invest in their own home
Mhm.
as they live there, some kind of component like that. Because one of the issues we see is that I don't like to see perpetual poverty. Where this generations are depending on the low income housing. So where's some kind of incentive to move people up in these housing areas? So, you know, I want you to provide them a home because, you know, we have more homeless people sleeping in tents in DC, and all of them are mentally unstable. Yes. So to get, you know, from the shelter on York Avenue to the next level, to work people up, and sometimes, you know, we talk about income, they need a job skill. So something that aligns with that. So when they're dealing with these contractors, that one of the tenants is an electrician. So he knows what's wrong with the unit. Some kind of component like that, an education component for the low-income residents, so they don't stay low-income.
It's a very good question. Yes, that's a huge part of the bill. Union jobs is a huge component of the Green New Deal for housing. As you mentioned, electricians, even property managers, like how do you manage a building, maintenance, like all of that is included into this, like especially union, because a lot of the time, you know, a lot of these jobs are exploitative. So we want to make sure that they're unionized as well, good benefits.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, there's a stipulation that a certain percent of the labor in it has to be union. And also that, like, I don't know, what is the acronym? Project labor agreement.
PLA.
Our bill kind of like has a symbiotic relationship with the recent project labor agreement legislation that the city council passed. So government projects over a certain amount, I don't remember the threshold, but most buildings that this bill would deal with would be over that threshold, need to both have a very high percent of unionized labor, which I think is just really good for training particularly young people to be in the workforce and find a way to move into the middle class at least. Separately, it has to fund union-led apprenticeship programs, which is part of the PLA program. So while it isn't directly in the building, which is kind of what you're getting at, it is like these buildings would be a significant government investment in worker education for young people. So
Wouldn't necessarily be in the building, but like,
yeah.
Every car is big.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You have to work on building a house, so as tenants, these would like be the first right, because you're in the apprentice program, so you're working on this building, this street, but you're going to move into the next building, already completed. Something that they know when they get trained. Yeah. They know that they're investing in something that belongs to them, which gives them pride. And I think that just helps. That's pride. You know, we invest in something that we own, we feel good about it, we take care of it.
Totally.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
I guess when it comes to this kind of bill that it's proposing, how much support do you have for it right now? The way I look at things is this, for example, a mixed income neighborhood, one of the largest in the world, and it's getting more gentrified by the day. We're getting a lot of folks that are not typical residents that were considered, like in the past, to look for okay housing. Now it's looking for cheap housing that I can purchase, even though it costs $100,000 range. So we're getting more rich people moving into this neighborhood, and more folks like me and others that, you know, found a space here because it was affordable. Yeah. For getting, you know, bought out or out. So I see the city wanting to have those rich people to come in because they get tax those folks.
Right.
Because eventually DC must become a state, and that's very expensive. So they want folks with good income to be able to tax rate. What kind of support are you seeing on the tax end?
wrong, please correct me.
Yeah.
I think there's a stipulation that it has to be DC residents who've been here for a certain amount of time that can access these units. I need to review that, but I do remember
Yeah, I think it's.
us talking about this, to making sure that DC residents who've been here a long time stay, in these units. In terms of support, majority of council supports it. I think the big things in the policy is, number one, the financing, and number two, the agency. And we've been having conversations with council members over this. This is what they've been told us, but, Council Member Robert White, who chairs the housing committee, is very supportive of it. And so that's huge for us, and to be able to push this along.
It's like standing out, right?
Well, currently, I think it has passed through one more committee, which is the Business Development Committee, that's chaired by McDuffie right now, and he needs a bit more pushing on this, it seems. So that is someone, that's a committee that we need to engage with a bit more
Okay.
at this point, yeah.
On the first part, on like the gentrification part, I think honestly, that's why I'm excited about this bill. We can show some examples of like where this type of housing, social housing, has worked in other parts of the world. But like, it's kind of like I do think we need to build housing, but every time I see housing being built in this city, it's like doing exactly what you're saying. It's luxury housing that's pushing people out. And this is a way to like stipulate that if we're going to build, we have to have a strong percentage of it go to like middle income people who also like, and people who've lived here a long time. So, yeah.
And I know, we're gonna be having a delegation from Vienna, if you want to talk to that a little bit, or I can, regarding, the Vienna Social Democratic Party, who engaged with a program of building up a significant social housing program. I think this was after like the First World War, so it might be a little bit more, contextual than this situation at the moment, but we're going to be having some people here to discuss like how they built up their housing program, which typically tends to be about 30 to 40% more cheaper than the other, apartments in the area, and how we can build upon that to fund cheaper housing in the area.
Well, on your question on city council, we have 8 city council members on board. We have near a supermajority. The mayor is very opposed. Yeah. I think Councilmember Parker is supportive. Yeah, so Parker, Lewis George, White, Fran White, Pinto, Bonds has voted on one proposal and not on the other. It's confusing. There are others, but I'm forgetting them.
Yeah.
James Lewis George.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, you did.
Nadeau.
Yeah.
And I think like our fight, because we have like a pretty strong support in the council, is about, and pretty strong opposition from the mayor. I think we're like in a place of doing community education, kind of building up grassroots support for it. We're trying to engage labor, trying to engage like tenant unions more. But one thing to know about the administration of this bill that I think is like important to like, I don't know, peek behind the curtain, is that every new department in the city, like whether it's our social housing department or anything, has to be majority directed by the mayor. So like this board, a majority of the appointments, so that's under home rule charter. So a majority of our appointments have to be from the mayor. So it's actually quite important, kind of like we've seen with a lot of other initiatives in the city, and the mayor's support or not for them really decides their success because of that stipulation. So I think we're kind of like figuring out our relation to that right now, where we're like building support in the hopes of maybe a future mayoralty that is more supportive and can deeply invest in this in that way. Because we could pass it, and hopefully we will soon, but also we need a mayor who is like actually going to use the power of the social housing department to build low-income housing and housing generally.
I was going to ask that follow-up question on that, I guess. Thank you so much, but do you have like a timeline of what this would potentially look like, or what was really popping in my mind, you wait for that mayor to come in, especially with the one that you have sitting right now, will most likely not undermine it, but would not be supportive.
Yeah. I think there's different thoughts on this in the coalition.
Yeah. I would say let's say the bill passes now a year there would be like pilot programs in the beginning while the agency is being set. So this is like me guessing. This is like nothing definitive, but I would say bill passes, there are pilot programs that are doing social housing. It takes about 7 months to a year to set up the agency, and after that, the bill will have to be implemented fully. So it will take a year to set up and then implementation. Yes, funding and then, the running of the units and the retrofitting and all of that. I also wanted to really mention that this is a long-term project. While we recognize that there are urgent needs for tenants, we're also helping efforts like TOPA, helping like tenants organize their buildings. So while we're organizing for this proposal, at the same time, we are supporting tenant unions around the city. We've been to different buildings like the Woodner. I know if you worked at Marbury Plaza. We've gone to Twin Oaks, and I believe that's 14th and Quincy. I could be wrong. So we are going to different apartment buildings and talking to people about this, and at the same time helping them in the urgent needs now, so that whenever we pass this, we can have this ready to go. Because there are many fights on housing justice. And I would say that social housing is a solution, but this is me personally, my personal opinion. I think that at some point the federal government is going to have to take back its responsibility to fund public housing, because this whole crisis really started because in Ronald Reagan in the 1980s decided to, we're going to privatize everything and we're not going to have social services. That includes housing. That includes housing. And so this is like a solution to a much bigger problem that we're going to have to organize and really push the federal government to say, okay, we are working around different solutions, but at the end of the day, the federal government will have to take its responsibility. Like, we're going to have to fund public housing, other means of homeownership, different programs in the long term.
Yeah, and this is one of these things that, so I currently reside in the Woodner building, which has about, I think, 1,100 to 1,200
Yes.
apartments. We live pretty close to each
Yes.
other. It's about this is one of the things where I've been engaging with the tenants union to help tenants get the quarterly ERAP payments. That's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, among other things, and that's something that I definitely support. But one of the things that I've been trying to engage with in terms of residents is that seems a bit more of a short-term solution in comparison to something like a social housing program, or something that people can engage with that is actually, that people are actually able to pay for, in terms of like we keep trying to pay our rent and it keeps being more and more unsustainable. And it's something that trying to basically undercut the market and basically have the district pay for housing is something that we can undercut middlemen and just make housing that's a bit more affordable because we ignore that market or go through it essentially.
I actually think so there are only there's really only one other place in America that has a social housing department. It's Montgomery County, right above us. They passed it 3 years ago. Yeah. But we're able to break ground on a new building within 2 years, which is pretty cool. So the picture of that is here. I know this is not great, but this is the Laurel, which is to the right. It's right above DC in Montgomery County. And this is the Hillendale Gateway, which is a proposal that should be done in a year and a half. Both this one, I don't think only has 400 apartments, and I think this will be in the thousands. So they did theirs a little differently. They, of the stock of housing that the bill will create in Montgomery County, which is the only other right now social housing department in America, 40% need to go towards low-income residents. So in some ways, it's like they are creating affordable housing. We want to do more than that. We're ultimately aiming for it's like 60%, because we think that the goal of this bill mostly should be harnessing the power of the market rate housing to fund in affordable units. But it is a really cool way for the government itself to, in Montgomery County, to be making market rate housing and benefiting from it. The tax dollars they get, or the money they make from that, goes directly into their schools and their infrastructure and things like that. And as long as we're going to have these incredibly overpriced luxury developments, we should benefit from it. The other place that is probably most well-known in the world for social housing, like you were saying, I think, is Austria. Post both world wars, there are two spikes in support for their social housing, partially because the country was so devastated. Right now in Vienna, there's about 60% of the city are renters, and 90% of those renters rent directly from the government through a social housing program, and that's all income levels. And if you can only kind of see it here, but they're really beautiful apartments because of that equity and because of that amount of funding that can go to everyone. It's just like really gorgeous apartments with pools on the top, with parks between them. Like that's the kind of thing you can access when you have that amount of funding. Outside of that, this kind of program is one of the most popular ways to do affordable housing across Europe, across Southeast Asia. France is really well known for it. So it's done in a lot of other places in the world, but in America we don't. That's like not how we've tackled affordable housing primarily. Yeah.
Do you think it hasn't happened in America, or such programs haven't worked in America because Americans cannot be that responsible with property that is theirs? We do have a lot of tenants here all the time, landlords. It's hard to get a good tenant in that takes care of the place. I see it happen with some new buildings that pop up that they come out really nice, and a few years later, that's my person there, and it's something else. Those are real concerns that people oppose this kind of subsidy.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, is there anything in place or any thoughts or ideas of how to kind of prevent that? Maybe going back to what Mr. Lee was saying, like training scholarships to teach skills, but yeah, I'm just curious.
I think y'all have
Could you
other.
summarize the comment, please, for the interpreter? We missed it. We can't hear it from here.
The question.
Yeah, the question, the comment, we just only got a bit of what was said.
Yeah, the question, comment was, is there anything in place to kind of help keep these spaces in, I guess, is there anything in place that would help keep these spaces in a place of quality of living in terms of just the property being, property being taken care of?
Like well maintained, yeah.
Well maintained and with any security.
I think the best way to prevent that is like providing housing that people understand is respectable. Like I think there's multiple answers to that. And one is that I think I feel like I have a hunch that like one of the reasons we see that is because so much of our housing, particularly housing for low income people in this city and country, is often just like so like deplorable. Like it's just so like historically underfunded, you know? I mean, like all these buildings that we've been talking about and that we help organize rent, Marbury Plaza was just in like 3 weeks ago. You know, like literally rat infested, like you can see it, like mold infested, like, and I, you know, it's all theoretical, but I do think that the like impact on a tenant when you have that kind of situation is to care less about how you treat the place and how much investment, you know, physically and mentally in terms of your life you put into the upkeep of that community and that place. So that would be my take. But I think there's probably other things there that we could, I don't know if, I haven't thought as much about. That's a good point.
Good job opportunities.
Yeah.
And when you feel ownership of something, you respect it more too. You have a question.
That's something. But it's just kind of funny, maybe ironic. We both mentioned two buildings that 40 years ago, in Washington, they were luxury apartments. Marbury Plaza in the Wood.
Luxury, yep.
They were luxury and high end.
Yep.
And so we see a prime example is a building here across Havana, Florida Avenue, which was supposed to be Symbol 6 and a war, but we can see it's right across the line. It was just built and was supposed to have been, I think it was touted as, I don't want to say, sell approximately single person,
yeah.
smaller unit, like not efficient, but a little bigger than efficiency. And now the owner, they cut the central air conditioning off. There's window units in the building. The front door is always broken. So this was a brand new building. And so I guess the rent was too high for young people because, you know, close to 8th Street, no one wanted to move in. So they started renting to lower income people. And the building's falling apart, and it's 3 years old.
Right.
And you can walk by and just tell between the two. It was actually 2 projects over there that never could get off the ground. Luxury buildings that were built. It was the 5-unit, the elevator, and no one purchased those. And now that's subsidized housing. I'm just going by the way it's on the outside. And that, so when you do these programs, I think people have to be trained. We have to make, I'm all about making people feel their self-worth. And that's one of the things that we missed in the city of Washingtonians is that, I won't say it's gentrification, but when we asked for things over the years, we never got it.
Right.
You know, we had to fight to get the school built.
Right.
We were getting to the neighborhood transition, and that's when the battle comes.
Mm-hmm.
And like we see, even with your social housing projects, we see immediate bike lanes,
Right.
but we can't get an alley pay.
Yeah.
You know,
That's reality.
You know, so when you talk about this housing thing, and then what Commissioner Guzman was saying, right, we still have to work with the people
Yeah.
to really raise them up so they can feel and have something that's going to make them, show them that the city cares.
Yeah.
That's really what happens. See, this is where we have all the house problems. We get more excitement for new folks. And it's so funny. And because I'm Washingtonian, my parents were gentrifiers.
Yeah.
When they moved into their Jewish neighborhood, all the Jewish people left.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, so now we're cycling right back again.
Yeah.
Our Trinidad area used to be a white neighborhood,
Yeah.
can we say that? And now it's coming back.
Yeah.
It's transitioning again. So,
Yeah.
but the Woodler and the Marbury house were luxury apartments.
I
That's
know.
where congressmen live, and that's where the rich folks.
You might be living in a former
I know.
Just tying in some of what I agree with everything you're saying. And also Marbury Plaza, has for a long time had a section of now as a majority, Section 8 housing voucher tenants. And Section 8 housing vouchers pay proportionally significantly less to the landlord than they used to. And that's because of federal disinvestment in our federal housing programs. And so, like, you know, don't love landlords, but also when the landlord is getting less per tenant over time, what happens is they invest less in the building itself. And that, like Marbury Plaza, I think is actually a great example of like any kind of government investment declining over time. Like it went from a literal like luxury townhouse kind of building to what it's always in the news now for mold infestations. And part of
ways, like specifically, that this social housing proposal is designed is that it has given our current federal laws, there needs to be a certain level of profitability. And I think is it the Fair Clause Amendment? Is that might be a bit of a longer conversation. But essentially how this legislation is designed is that there is a current, I think it's what's like 40% affordability in terms, or like 40% market rate, and then 30% up to
60% affordability, 40%.
Yeah. So okay, so that I think more incentivizes investment in those buildings while also making it so that it's more affordable for residents in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With your program, lower section, with that, taking in section 8 of the government program, that's my question, they got me. So, yeah.
we actually don't know. We are trying to figure that out right now. Yeah.
Program says that one of all that income can be.
Mm-hmm.
If you put people in who are not next year, they want to have the whoever what is fair about don't care and they're
on the section housing voucher things, I think that we're trying to figure out with Janice with George and Robert White's office in particular, the legality of that. Like like we just don't know. Like, can the program take Section 8 housing vouchers or not, and what that looks like? Because I think we just don't know the answer to
We
that
have
yet.
to double check on that.
The other thing, yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot, you were just talking about how this neighborhood is well known for being mixed income. Like, I live in a more mixed income area. Like, I think people can live alongside each other in that way. And I think that's like an ideal neighborhood, but, yeah, that's kind of, yeah.
They could live together, better, only together,
Hmm.
building that also.
Yeah. I feel you. Yeah.
Such a variety of.
Yeah.
Whether it's low, middle, high, all in one. It's a lot.
It's a lot of people. Yeah, it is.
And you think that it's smaller, it's going to be so small, it's, you know, access. Back to get more than 2 or 3 kids. So you talk about living in a square footage of a building, they're not going to live in those anyway because it's too small.
Yeah.
Are they family size?
Yes, there's a big emphasis on family size unit.
Which means what?
But they would, you know, towards the,
It's like multi-apartment, so like a few things. So one thing it incentivizes is like duplex, quadruplex buildings, which allow for more buildings that have like multiple bedrooms as well as like communal space, while also being like the reason the reason most government programs move towards like apartments rather than houses, like, is just that's a greater impact on how many people you can support to continue to live in the city, obviously just in terms of the space. And knowing that you could go overboard and do 2 small apartment units, we put in those family sustaining provisions into the bill because we're trying to incentivize duplexes, quadruplexes, townhomes that are combined so that there's more space for families to like have separation with different bedrooms and things like that. Because, and what I will say is that like right now, the market is definitely not providing those kinds of buildings like at all. Like most luxury developments, there are no family apartments. So, that was one reason I got really involved in this is I think actually public developers would be more well suited to create, like family sustaining apartments with that kind of space. Yeah.
so the pretty of the building, so it's one thing, like I
Mm.
larger units,
Mhm.
but in the air quality, for example, folks are able to smoke in their homes for the cigarettes. So what you also want to say to buildings that are going to be looking at air quality and
Yeah.
the building space or the materials. See everyone.
Between that building themselves, I think there's nothing specific. The only thing I can think of in terms of that would be, since the tenants would have more of a say of what happens in the building, it would have to be between the tenants
Yeah.
in the building, basically getting into the community, having a, serious talk about the rules of that specific unit or the specific, that specific development. I don't know if you have anything to that.
Yeah, I think it's using, so that, and also definitely any new buildings would be free of lead and asbestos, which remains a problem in the city. I think the other things would be like, in terms of like air quality from like other, like vaping or other types of like smoking. I actually don't know if we've covered that, but I think that's a really great point, and we should think about that. I do know that the post-COVID, not post, but like post-COVID new building regulations are much better on air quality management. That applies not just to like our bill, but to like buildings overall across the city, in terms of circulating airflow so that people which I think also affects like smoking and stuff like that. But this bill doesn't have anything on that, but I think that's a really good point. We should talk about that.
For example, there's a senior over Baker Road,
Yeah.
which says no smoking for anything. And they actually, talked to the building man. They have actually evicted.
Really?
Give you a warning. But I guess it's subsidized, it's a senior building. So I don't know if it's reduced rental based on income, but you plan it's in their lease agreement. That there's no smoking within 50 feet of the building, definitely no smoking in the unit. And I said, because it's a brand new building, I said, y'all have no, she said, no, because people don't think we're serious. Right. And they evict you. Totally. Yeah. If you break the smoking law. So that would be something, because we got some friends that, now the building, it's not a new house, but, the stronger weed just permeates between, the townhouse, it's piggyback. Right. Duplexes kind of goes over. Right. The smell, the base run out of her house.
Yeah. Yeah.
She owns the unit.
Right.
They own it, but that's something to consider, because everybody, don't want people to get arrested. Be criminal.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But we also want people comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's a good point.
So we have, 6, 7, 6, actually, this, rest of the people, but now it's really okay. And that's what has to do with that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Question I'm gonna have before we close it out. Is there any areas that this bill is trying to target in the city? South Ward 5 is very similar to situations that our brothers face east of the river, 47 and 48. Not that Northwest doesn't have any problems, all right, crap on the rest, but we just have real serious issues. I think keeping the front for affordable housing right here in Trinidad. Yeah. And I would love to see some efforts such as this really target in-house residents. So just out of curiosity, where in the city you guys looking to potentially pilot this, or looking at in terms of, I'm sure you guys are looking at data across the city areas. Yeah. So yeah, what are your target areas, or what is your focus?
I know one, I don't know if you know the other.
Yeah, actually, 16th and U is one current target.
One current target.
I think one thing, in response to what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, and also, there's this trend in the city of wealthier neighborhoods blocking affordable housing, and that being problematic because, or blocking housing, period, whether it's affordable or not, and, that end up being a problem because, yeah. Oh, man, yeah. Often, though not always, those neighborhoods are often where people are commuting for work, or are nearer to transit, or are nearer to, so for instance, Georgetown is a great example. A lot of people go in there for work, but there is very little affordable, obviously. Yeah, there are dogs just running around. Wow. The kind of U Street corridor, is a great example of tons of people moving in, but less investment in affordable housing in particular. So we do want to have neighborhood diversity, but also there is a stipulation in the bill that you need to the new units that the department creates need to be a certain amount of walking distance from major either metro centers or public transit. So and the idea behind that is just that people are we're creating affordable housing in areas that aren't silos, that people are actually connected to jobs, community, and grocery stores and stuff like that. Things that we've heard about as huge problems in the rest of the city.
Oh, here is not too much east of the river.
Yeah. Well, but see, think about if we did east of the river and then we put low income housing, that that could also contribute to creating. I think there should be tons of work to make sure we get more grocery stores east of the river and transit that connects people.
Yeah, that might be something that's a bit more district, or district-wide, trying to invest in community grocery stores, or grocery stores that are not specifically just designed for profit, but that are things that are specifically trying to just feed people instead of trying to invest in that profit motive. I mean, we both live in Ward 1, and Ward 1, I think, has 12 grocery stores, and it's the smallest ward, and then Ward 7 and 8 combined have 3 or
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that might be something that's a bit more of a wider issue, but something that we can hopefully help with, or at the very least, we can reduce people's rents so that we can fight that next fight.
Yeah, basically, like, I would love for this bill to build in Anacostia, and also I'd be really scared to, like, the first buildings to be contributing to some of the ways that government affordable housing efforts have actually, like, siloed working people away from resources in the past. So kind of holding both those things.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that we're working with. I mean, obviously, we're not opposed to, like, either public housing or 100% affordable housing, but the social housing model, part of the thing that we're trying to avoid here is specifically making pockets of, like, housing that specifically either, like, is low income or is, like, impoverished, and the city tries to, like, de-invest from, but instead we're trying to make it a mixture of income so that basically that the city can't, or the district can't just de-invest from, that they have to basically engage with because of the mixture of income.
So, yeah, that's a great question, that we get that
Will
one.
mentioned that the program for the target DCA long-term residents. How is that defined?
We should get back to you on that. I think it's like, I forget the amount of time.
We believe, again, we have to double check. It's the way the current district, because I know the district does this already. Yeah, they do for their agencies. So I think it's a similar process.
Yeah, it's like 8 years. I forget
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
Commissioner Hoffman, I think presenting tomorrow. I'll be there. I was mainly gonna, be there because I asked them a bit, like, short, or like a week ago or something, like 5 days ago, so I was gonna try to take on the rest of the things, and I'll be a little bit more, or I guess less sleep deprived, by the time it comes tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, I'll be there. And hopefully I find a supportive Zoom background, which I've been trying to find.
Great.
I've been trying to take a mixture of, but yeah, so I'll be there at the very least. Okay, great.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Would you like me to speak on that, or, I mean, I can be in contact with you all on that?
We're gonna say this is a voting action item for tomorrow, so.
Okay, yeah, Anna, you want to contact me on, or we can talk on that. Okay, great. Cool.
Any other questions? You can also be around and talk.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give my email and phone number as well. Call anytime, no worries. Yeah. Yeah. My number is, I don't, is someone writing this? But yeah, you can call me at 443 492 8008. My number.
But also we have, the Green New Deal Coalition has Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, like, DM there. Anyone from the coalition will respond. We have a bunch of meetings coming up that are also, you can find there and from our listserv there. So this bill will likely be heard this fall, but, unclear if it will be voted on, because it will be, basically, it will move forward through one committee, which is gonna vote on it. The process of getting a bill like this passed is it needs to go through 2 committees and the whole council. So by the time it gets to that committee, we are not confident that it will have time before the cycle ends at the end of the year to go through the rest. But that said, we are gonna use that moment to try to educate the council and people about the social housing bill, bring people to testify, bring people to a rally, maybe outside, something like that. So if you'd like to engage with that or hear more about that, that's another way. Totally.
And I don't know, maybe I can share more info, like the links to our
Yeah.
our website and our social media, so you can share it with everybody and see.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For bringing this.
Oh, yeah, no, I had a hunch I would have been.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Didn't I pass?
You had to give it to me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna put that in yourself.
Yeah. Low energy.
This is it.
Sergeant Jackson's gonna come up. Sergeant, how long have you been with the fifth district? For a year? Okay, we can ask you some hard questions. You can sit up here in the front. This is our microphone for today, so if you can speak loudly so these beautiful people can interpret for you, that'd be great. Introduce yourself, what areas you cover, and you read up some of the stats that you have.
I got you. So as stated, I'm Sergeant Jackson of the Fifth District. I've been here for about a year, recently promoted. I'll be going over some stats from the last year to date. That time period, the period will be from January 1st to today's date, September 9th of last year and this year, and comparing the crime stats for both time periods. So we'll start with total crime. So the previous period was 494, and the current period will be 428. So total crime has been reduced by 66 over that past year time frame. Violent crime, which includes homicide, sex abuse, assault with a dangerous weapon, and robbery, from 77 to 59. And I will go through each crime individually. So homicide from 4 to 3. Sex abuse stayed at 2. It was even. Assault with dangerous weapon from 23 to 21. Robbery from 48 to 33. All property crime. That includes burglaries, from autos, regular thefts, and motor vehicle thefts. It went from 417 to 369. And the burglaries went from 18 to 20. That was an increase. Theft from auto, 86 to 137, also an increase. Regular theft, 182 to 136. And motor vehicle theft, 131 to 76, which was a decrease. The total property crime went from 417 to 369. So overall, in the last year, there's been a decrease in total crime, violent crime, and property crime. And that is the stats from January 1st to September 9th, comparing last year to this year.
That's covering for the whole district?
Yes. No, for PSA 506, sorry. Yes.
You saw an increase, I think, on auto theft?
The increase was in theft from auto, from 86 to 137.
For those folks that can make language, what do you mean by that?
Theft from auto, so basically your car getting broken into, and someone's taking property from your car as a result.
Do we know where in 506 we saw an increase? Like 506 also is maybe city.
So there isn't like a particular area. Like I have a crime map here. It just happens throughout the PSA. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it gets a crime opportunity. So it can happen on Neal Street, it can happen on Capitol Avenue, it can happen on Florida Avenue. It's just a crime opportunity. If people see something in the car or suspects, they tend to break into the car as a result to try and get said property. So we kind of advise people to not leave valuables in the car, to kind of reduce the impact of the theft part, you know what I'm saying? So, but there isn't any particular area that's either more or less. It's spread out throughout the PSA.
Are we seeing any trends in times that is happening or anything like that?
It's usually overnight, nighttime, like I said, the opportunity thing. So at nighttime, like people are out, darker outside, so it's more opportune to do it at nighttime. Also, when like weekends when there are clubs and stuff like that, how many clubs over here? But just from like my experience, like in the PSA 503, there's like pickle stage. So people are parking their cars in the areas, and as a result, during that time period, their cars get broken into from patronizing the club. But there aren't many clubs or nightclubs in PSA 506, so that really wouldn't apply. But but yeah, this is an opportunity.
Types of cars, what's up? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That still speaks, as far as, but, still saying as far as, but, as far as types of cars, or is there not types of cars at all?
From what I've seen, it's still the same thing. The Kias, the Hondas. There's one more I can't think of. but definitely keys on. I guess for some reason, whatever reason, they're easier to steal. So it's still the same thing, pretty much, yeah. And we've given out air tags, towels, car clubs to assist with the problem, but nonetheless, it's still a problem though.
That's I don't know when it was installed, the, crime camera at 1100 block of Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw a decrease in those, I'm saying less people hanging there.
Yes.
I don't know if it's, as you've seen a decrease in crime in that, for the unit right there.
Yes, there's less cost for service, less people in the area as a result of the camera. They know they're being watched. So overall, it's kind of brought that area kind of like a more tranquil, more calm area to be in. Yeah, it definitely helped for sure. Definitely deterred some folks from hanging out and doing what they were doing before.
So areas like the area where they do the tripping, so take down the shrine. Have there been less activity there? It looks like it is less activity.
I think I saw it on the way here, by that tree.
Yeah.
So how much monitoring going on there? And, again, it looks like it's a little less busy than it used to be as far as the crowd hanging out there. But whose responsibility is it to remove the shrine period of time? Because it's not that it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
I would assume it's DPW. That's what I would assume. I'm not 100% sure, but when it comes to like stuff like that, like I don't want to call it trash, but just stuff that needs to be disposed of, it's usually a DPW issue.
So that's a combination of that, right? It would be if you could definitely work together once you see that, or is that just a 311 decision?
More so not emergency 311. I don't think the police department has much involvement with the shrine. It would be removed and cleaned up by DPW. So I wouldn't say the police department is necessarily monitoring it, because it's not really, I won't say not a crime, but.
So I would add, so you're aware also, so the Department of Public Works are the ones that are in charge of removing that kind of material whenever they see it on the street, but they have to work collaboratively with MPD to have an officer there just in case something happens. Because at the end of the day, people are placing those shrines in memory of someone that's passed majority of the time, right? So they want to make sure that that space is respected, even though they're there to remove it. So the sweep inspector for DPW, she usually comes out, checks the area after receiving a 311 request or a phone call, and then they put a ticket in for DPW to get at least one officer to come out and assist the workers to remove the shrine itself. So that's how usually that's been working in Trinidad. I got a question, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
We've seen an uptick in violence on Sims Place. I wouldn't say it's worse than what it's been. We've had worse days and years in Trinidad, but there is an uptick. I did see that you guys had an officer stationed out there the other night, which was great. I do see that you all are now coming out of your cars a lot more, so that's really good, because I think a lot of residents want to see that more than just see the car stationed.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you can share on Sims Place? Because as we shared about ROM, we've seen a lot of the activity there go down, but it seems like some of the activities picked up on Sims Place just a few blocks over.
I'm sorry, what exactly is the question?
Is there anything that's being done, particularly with Sims Place, being that we've seen the uptick in shots being fired and people congregating more than they used to on Sims?
To my knowledge, there's just more increase in targeted patrols. There may be in the works to get a crime camera in that area as well, similar to ROM, but for now it's just more increased patrols.
Yep.
And that also comes at the same time with not limited, but lower manpower. So it's kind of like a give and take.
I know I did speak to the commander there, thinking about getting a police camera further into Sims Place. I think there might be a station, mobile one on the corner of Sims in Montello. trying to get one closer off to Trinidad and Sims.
Mm-hmm.
But, either way, you know, keep up the good work, you know, just keep showing up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions, Commissioner? Questions at MPD?
I also have this, I don't want to call it brochure, but this information on the private security camera rebate program. If you haven't already, you can get a camera installed at your residence or your property or business, and the government will rebate you for the camera being installed. So I'll leave this form here for you guys to photograph it or pass it along. I don't know if there's copy machines here, but all the info will be here to get a rebate for a camera being installed and registered with the government. This will be right here for you guys.
Thank you, Sergeant.
All right, no problem. Take care. Everybody be safe. Thank you.
Right.
Information on the table here. We have no Q&A for us,
You have random questions, yeah, of course. So we'll open the floor for any, questions that the public may have before we, shut off in the next 4 minutes. Okay. I will recommend you, if you don't have the social media platform Instagram, I know it's a millennial thing, but feel free to go on there on mine. There's some videos of Trinidad Day on there, as well as a little interview that we did for an attendee. I can show you on my phone if you don't have Instagram, but just wanted to say Trinidad Day was amazing. We always put it together with a ragtag group of residents that make it work at the end of the day. Next year, I want to see it bigger, so we're planning a lot earlier. I want to get shirts like you guys used to do in the past, because a lot of people were wearing their old shirts. And to me, it's always a great thing, because you all are really good at putting the dates on the shirt. So it kind of shows me like, oh my God, this has been happening since the 70s. So we'll be working on that in the future. But either way, it was a great event, and there might be something coming up on this end of Trinidad by some of the folks from the Trinidad Farmers Market.
Yeah, I can't remember the date now. It's in early November, but we're gonna have if I can look it up. Did we check the chat for Zoom, people on Zoom if they have any questions? I think we forgot to do that. Is there any questions?
Okay. They're trying to do a Trinidad fall celebration in November, in celebration of some of the buildings out here being over 100 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then for you all, for those that aren't attending our meeting tomorrow for the ANC public meeting, myself and our commissioner in Union Market put a resolution together to get to pay for a history study to be done of all 5D, excluding Gallaudet, because I think they can definitely afford their own history study. But pretty much it would cover the neighborhoods of Union Market, Ivy City, Trinidad, and Carver, Langston. And the focus would be to pay a historian to really do a deep dive on the history of the land here in 5D. And hopefully some of that research can be used for some of the preservation efforts that some residents have in the neighborhood. So there will definitely be calls to action for that, because we want to see we want it to be a collaborative effort where you all put in some of your history into the project, because I'm sure you all know a lot, especially more than me. But we're looking at one specific historian in Ward 5. His name is Jeremiah Montague. He's an unknown historian in the ward, works with the Civil War Roundtable, and I'm excited to see the work that they'll put together eventually. So the resolution's on, for a vote tomorrow, and we'll open it up for 30 days to hire someone. So, if you have any archives or, sources of history of the neighborhood, feel free to, connect me with them so we can get it to this, person who'll be doing the project.
Yeah, I think it's called the Trinidad History and Future Fest that they're going to have. And it's gonna be in the Trinidad Farmers Market area on Sunday. It's a Sunday. I'll put it in the newsletter. Oh, Sunday, November 10th, from 9 to 1. It's gonna call the Trinidad History and Future Fest. It'll be an educational event to draw attention to Trinidad's robust and also its future and the celebration. So they're gonna have images, stories from the past, ideas for capturing the future of Trinidad. There'll be displays. It's gonna be like really nice. So I hope everyone will be able to make it. Yeah.
And that's all we got for y'all tonight. Thank you for joining us, and keep coming out. We love to see you.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.